Alright, when I say this cocktail is advanced, I mean it. We're gonna do some pretty advanced shit here. But having said that, this is one of the best cocktails I've ever made, so stick with me. And again, I'm excited to be partnered up with Squarespace for this video. I use Squarespace to make my website, and I'll talk about this a bit more at the end. Now, this cocktail comes from the legendary Aviary cocktail bar in Chicago, and in 2018 they put out their first cocktail book, and I was super excited to find that my favorite cocktail from the Aviary was listed here. And today we're going to be making their take on the classic tiki drink, the Jungle Bird, which originally was developed in the 1970s in Kuala Lumpur at another bar that happened to be called the Aviary. Now we're going to follow this recipe to the letter, including this beautiful layered presentation here. So let's go through each layer step by step. Now the trickiest and, in my opinion, the best part of this drink are these rum-filled spheres. So let's get this one out of the way first. Start by adding a liter of filtered water to a large bowl. Now we need some sodium alginate, which is derived from brown algae or seaweed, and it's a key part in the spherification process that's popular in molecular gastronomy. We're going to add 7.5 grams and then blend with an immersion blender until no clumps remain. Now it's going to have a bit of a slimy consistency, and we're going to want to strain through a fine mesh strainer, then let it sit at least an hour or overnight so it can fully hydrate and remove any bubbles. After that's ready, grab a saucepan, and then we're going to be precise here. Add 125 mils of filtered water, 20 grams of sugar, and then 26 grams of brown sugar. Ideally you use dark brown sugar, but any brown sugar works. Now we need our other fancy ingredient here. This is calcium lactate, and it's going to help with that spherification process as well. We're going to add 3.3 grams of this. Then we're going to warm all this up in your saucepan, whisking to dissolve. Then remove it from the heat and add it to an ice bath to cool. Run this through a fine mesh strainer, and now we're going to carefully pour this mixture into this sphere mold. Now, the mold I'm using here creates spheres that are about 5/8 of an inch or 16 millimeters. I'll put a link to all the equipment on my website, but this is probably one of the most tedious parts of this whole process. Now, I'm kind of overfilling this here, so in retrospect, I'd fill each hole 3/4 of the way up to the top. And then we need to let that freeze completely. Alright, now we are ready to make our spheres, so grab that sodium alginate bath from earlier and a little perforated spoon like this. You're going to want to heat up that bath in the microwave. You're also going to want 2 bowls of cold water. Alright, here's the fun part. Now this is going to take some practice. You're going to grab your frozen spheres and drop them in that warm sodium alginate bath. Right away, you're going to start to see this membrane start to form, and that's because the calcium ions from that calcium lactate insert themselves between the individual alginate strands in that sodium alginate and will allow them to interlock and form a gel. At this point, it's important not to let the spheres touch each other or they'll sort of stick together, and you want to gently agitate them until you see a nice membrane form. You're going to transfer to your first cold bath and they'll start to solidify a little bit more, then transfer to your second cold bath, and then you should be good to go. The time it takes for the membrane to form should range between 10 and 30 seconds depending on the temperature of the bath. When you're done, then you're going to add the spheres to a container, and you just want to be gentle so you don't pop that membrane. This recipe calls for about 40 of these spheres per cocktail, so once you have them all in the container, cover them with Gosling's dark rum, and you're going to let them infuse for about 4 hours. Alright, now hold up. If you have made it this far, congratulations, you are officially a molecular mixologist. Start lining up someone special to present this cocktail to, because you're about to blow some minds here. And good news is, the hardest part's already done. While your spheres are infusing with rum, we're going to start preparing some of the other layers of this drink. Take some Campari and add it to a container like a mason jar, and then you're also going to take some Gosling's dark rum, add that to a container. And finally, we need some rum water. So we're going to take about 100 mils of this Magdalena white rum and 100 mils of filtered water and put that into a container. We want these all nice and cool, so we're going to take them and put them in the freezer. Now keep in mind, the rum water will eventually freeze solid if you leave it in too long. And finally, we need our Jungle Bird base. Now to do this, we're going to start with some fresh pineapple juice, and the recipe calls for exactly 294 grams. Throw that into a blender. After that, it calls for 142 grams of fresh lime juice. We're then going to sweeten that up with 100 grams of sugar and finish with 107 grams of filtered water. Blend that on high for about 1 minute to dissolve all the sugar, and then you're going to pour it into a container and let that chill out in an ice bath. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to do the damn thing. So grab yourself a Collins glass, and I'm going to use this fancy layering device here, but you can also use the back of a spoon to help layer. First up, we need our Jungle Bird base, 4.5 ounces or about 135 mils, right into the glass. Next up, grab that perforated spoon and we are going to gently layer in those Gosling-infused spheres. And as I mentioned earlier, the recipe calls for about 40 of these things, but because mine were a bit on the large side, I'm gonna pare that back a bit. Grab your trusty layering device and then we're going to layer on 1 ounce or about 30 mils of your chilled Campari. This thing's actually pretty neat. The liquid will run down that thin metal wire and around that buoy and gently create that nice color contrast. Next up, we need our chilled rum water. We're gonna add 2 ounces or about 60 mils. And for our final layer, 1 ounce or 30 mils of our chilled Gosling's dark rum. Now to drink this, you're gonna need a big ol' sippy cylinder, just like if you were gonna drink some boba tea. Look at that. It's so pretty, I kinda don't even wanna drink this. Yeah, okay, I wanna drink this. The Aviary's Jungle Bird. Gonna wanna give that a stir to mix everything up, and let's give it a taste. Holy shit, that's good. You get this nice bittersweet taste from the Campari, the pineapple juice is fantastic, and those rum spheres just explode in your mouth when you bite into them. It's such an interesting, fun texture. Yeah, this is a lot of work, but honestly, this juice is worth the squeeze, guys. Give it a try. So if you guys have been to my website, I actually built that on Squarespace, and I really have loved the experience. You can create a beautiful website or an online store with an award-winning template using their all-in-one platform. There's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade ever. You'll also get this award-winning 24/7 customer support. So they offer a unique domain experience that's fully transparent and simple to set up, and they're used by a wide range of creatives and people, musicians, designers, artists, and restaurants, and more. So go to squarespace.com/cocktail to get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase.